All right, welcome to another episode of Closers or Losers. I'm here with my co-host, Matt Ryder, our awesome CEO, the savage of a CEO that was just talking to me about hunting deer in Hawaii for the Christmas party. I love that, man. I love that about you. Just random stuff. Random stuff.
We got to do it.
Random deer in Hawaii. I wouldn't even have thought they had, I guess they would have deer in Hawaii.
They have axis deer, like the fastest deer in the world.
I never really thought about Hawaii having like deer hunting. I always think about like the Midwest and Missouri where I grew up, where we're just, shooting the white-tailed deer, running down the, just shooting them out of the truck.
These are the special forces of deer, man. They're hard to get. So, you got to earn it.
So today we're going to talk about something that's very important, because we get asked this question a lot of time in our different Facebook groups. If you haven't joined our regular Facebook group where we go live 3-4 times a weekend with different trainings, different Q&As, things you can learn how to sell more of your products and services, go to Sales Revolution. There should be somebody you can join for free today. But a lot of people ask me this question like, Jeremy, what are some of the biggest things besides just learning NPQ, learning the right questions to ask, how to ask them, your delivery, your tonality? What's some of the biggest things that we need to learn to be like a top, 3% salesperson, a top 1% salesperson that makes all the money, that gets all the recognition, that just has all the accolades, that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year or more? Like, what does it actually take? And I wrote down, there's so many things. I mean, there's, I'm going to boil this down into 5 things, but there's really categories of each one of these. And I would say the first and foremost, most important thing that you need to do, especially if you work in an office, which most salespeople do. Now, sometimes because of the coronavirus, you might be working from home now or whatever. But the first thing you have to do is you have to resign from what I call the company club. Let me explain what that means. So in every organization you have, like when I was in sales, the 4 different industries that I had, they always had the company club. And those were the guys, the salespeople that would always go in the break room and they would complain about the leads. They would complain about the management. They'd complain about their quota. They'd complain that the product sucks. The services are no good. They'd always complain. That's the company club. Matt, what are your thoughts about the company club?
Yeah, I think you're a product of the people that you spend the most amount of time with. So the people that you spend the most amount of time, like if you're surrounded by people who are complaining, like there's problems with everything. Like there's always going to be problems with marketing. There's always going to be some problems delivered. There's always these problems. But like the true salespeople, the sales professionals are the ones that don't look at them as problems, or they don't look at them as bigger problems and they can't solve. Look at them as things that they can solve individually, right? Yeah. And so, like separating yourself from that environment and then just doing the work and getting the work done is so essential to becoming a top performing sales rep. Because like if you hear it enough times, you will start to believe it.
100% of the time. You can be a top producer. Let's say you're in the top 10% of your company and you start hanging out with the crowd. Everybody knows what I mean. The crowd that complains and everything's bad. You will literally start to act the same way and you'll start to believe that. And when you get on the phone, you get on Zoom or the phone or in meetings, you start to believe your leads are bad. You start to believe that nobody has the money. And so then you just don't react and you just have this mindset of nobody has money, everything's bad. And it just crushes your performance 100%.
Yeah. I used to enjoy it because I was kind of fed off that, but in the opposite way.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you guys keep thinking that. I was like, where do you guys keep your follow-up lists? Yeah. Okay. Like, and I'd just go after their no sales because they weren't going to follow up because they were unqualified. Right.
Yeah.
And I think like people look at things in different perspectives. Like the way that I look at like an unqualified lead is like, well, they're unqualified today.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're dead to me. It doesn't mean that they're not worth keeping in my pipeline, because especially when it comes to like financially unqualified, man, like money is like the tides. It comes in, it goes out. It comes in, it goes out. So you might speak to someone 1 month and they might have like an abundance of cash. And then 2 or 3 months later, they might have none. And 6 months later, they have a ton. So it's just,
You know what I would do?
game.
Oh, dude, I
What's
was
that?
crazy, man. So people would go in there and like, oh, my leads suck and whatever. And I was just on this phone with this guy, and he said he didn't have the money. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean he said he didn't have the money? Well, he said that now wasn't a good time, but it's about 3 months. I'm like, okay, dude, just give me the lead. I'm gonna go call the lead right now, and if I make this sale, I'm gonna take all the commission from it. Are you cool with that? They're like, oh yeah, there's no way you could do it. And I would literally go in and close that lead 95% of the time. And we're like, and
That must have made people so angry.
they would be on there listening. They're like, what? Like, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't ask him, like, you didn't help him see what his current situation was. You didn't get him to see visually where he wanted to be, his objective state. You didn't ask the right questions. There was no gap. So he didn't even realize he had that bad of a problem. And then at the very end, when he said he didn't have the money, it's because you didn't build a strong enough gap for him to see that really not solving the problems was costing him 20 times more money than it would be to pay for our services to actually solve the problem. And so I would try to teach like little lessons to our sales guys and stuff like that for the companies that I work with, because that kind of stuff just like pissed me off when salespeople would say that.
Yeah. It's also one of the things that we teach when we come and do a done for you management for sales companies. Some of you don't know, but we come in and we'll manage a sales company. We'll manage all the sales staff, put the culture in, put the tracking in, make sure it's all run properly, is like getting those people out of the culture. Whenever we take someone on, I'll do an interview with all the sales staff. And then I'll be like, that guy's cancer, that guy's cancer, that guy's cancer. Like, you don't have to, but my recommendation is get rid of them.
Yeah.
And they might even be one of the higher performers, but it's like, the attitude of a salesperson can absolutely ruin the sales team.
It can affect everybody else. One thing that I would do, I've talked about this on other shows, but people knew like not to come talk to me about stupid stuff, right? So we would make these little, like on the hotels, it says, do not disturb. So we had all these signs. I talked to you about this another time. So this is one of my jobs when I sold B2B, like debt relief services. And on the door, so like you'd walk around, I had my own private office, like everybody else was in the cubicles. Mine was over here in like the corner suite office that was bigger than the CO, because I was like selling millions of dollars worth of volume every month. And so they just gave me the nice office. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And so I would actually put, I think it was like prospect time blocking or something. I can't remember. I called it something like prospect time blocking, do not disturb or something on there. And nobody, like it had to be like a 911 emergency to knock on my door. Like nobody would ever knock on that door. And they knew that if I came in the break room or if I walked around, so I started instilling a culture in that company when I got there, because I was the new guy, that, you know what, if we're going to talk about strategy. We're going to talk about how to close more. We're going to talk about how we can help our prospects more. And you can create that type of environment if you start focusing on it. So if you're a salesperson, you want to change the culture. If you're a sales manager as well, and you want to change the culture, you just change what you're talking about. So you want to start talking about strategy, solutions on how to sell more. What books are you reading? What training are you going through? And you have that competitive drive, and your salespeople around you start to just change. So the first thing you have to do is you have to resign from the company club. Anything else on that?
I guess, like, what are your thoughts on today's more remote selling environment? Like, I guess, how do you think you kind of either avoid or potentially stop that from becoming a thing?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you brought that up, because a lot of companies, and it just depends on your industry too. There are some industries that still everybody goes in the office, but a lot of salespeople are selling from home right now. So I think the biggest challenge now is not necessarily like them calling other reps. And I know that probably happens. Harder for you to control them calling other reps and complaining. But I think the biggest challenge is you're not able to monitor people to see if they're even working. So you have to, I think your job's even harder now to create that company culture where there's so much competitiveness. Like the companies that I was in, we would have so much competitiveness that everybody was like trying to kill each other to outsell each other. Like every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every 6 months, every year. And it wasn't even necessarily to make more money. It was just to get more recognition, to get the bigger trophies, to get the bigger car allowance, to be able to have the accolades and the owner of the company taking you golfing. Like companies I was
What are your thoughts on that though? Because like for me, that's like, I wouldn't want that culture. I would want a similar outcome where everybody wants to perform, but I would want them to be shared in a more unified vision of like, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. And then have them want to perform from a state of like, it benefits more people and it can contribute to the company and that kind of stuff, not really so that you can take and golf in.
I think you bring up a good point. It's a mixture, but you have to get your reps like so competitive against each other that they are like trying to out hustle, outsell, outlearn all the other sales reps. Now they do that for a cause, right? They have a vision of where
more of a collaborative competition than like a combative competition.
Yeah. I don't mean like, hey, what's your, like, if somebody says like, hey, when you get this objection, how should you overcome it? I'm not going to tell you, like, not that. Yeah. They're helping each other, but they're out working, they're out hustling, and especially they're out learning. So like one of the companies I worked for sold for Blackstone for 2.2 billion, like 7 years ago. Okay. That culture, I was there many years before, but we created that culture where there was so much competitiveness that people kept doing more and more every day, every week, every month. And it just drove the company culture because you didn't want to be one of those guys that were like coming in the office late, not staying. Like, you just didn't want to be in that field because you didn't want to be viewed as that guy that just wasn't selling that much. So you did whatever you could to read, to study, to learn more than anybody else did. And it paid off financially for you, but especially with, I think salespeople for the most part, they're motivated obviously by money, but the biggest motivation is accolades and just recognition from the higher ups, from what I've seen.
No, I agree. All right. We might not get to all 5 today, but let's go to number 2.
Okay, that's number 1. All right, number 2, be committed. All right, so you have to be committed. I get frustrated. I see so many salespeople that we train that even get into our advanced training courses, but it doesn't seem like and this is very few that get into our training that seem like this, but they sometimes just don't seem that committed. I'm like, do you really want to learn these skills? Like, if you want to learn advanced skills, to like double your income, triple, quadruple, like make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in your industry, because we train people in every industry that do that. You just have to simply be committed and decide in your mind that you want to be the best. Like, you can't say like, oh, if I'm in the top 50%, I'll be happy. Like, you're never going to be at the top with that type of attitude. Like, if you're an NBA player, you don't go in thinking like, oh, I'm going to be in the NBA and if I can just be average and, maybe the 8th or 9th man off the bench, I'll be happy. Nobody thinks that. Otherwise, they would never make the team, right? So the same is true in sales. You have to think like, okay, I want to be the best salesperson in my company. I want to learn the skills to do that. How do I do that? First of all, you just have to think like, I want to be the best, or I want to be one of the very best, and I'm going to do what it takes, and I'm going to be committed to my profession. Because if I'm going to work 40 hours a week, why wouldn't I want to make twice as much as I am now working 40 hours a week? I just have to up my skill level. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. I think like you can be given an F1 car, doesn't mean you can drive it well. Yeah. Right. So like, I consider like NEPQ, the model of selling that we teach, and more specifically that you've developed, to be a really, really very highly effective tool, right? But you can give like the best tools to an average craftsman because they haven't put the work into learning how to use the tools. And so a lot of people, some people think that just having the tools is enough, like purchasing the tools. It's like, no, you then have to learn how to use the tools so that you can become a craftsman, right? And sales it's very similar to something like, like art. Right? Like like woodworking. It's actually very similar to woodworking, right? You have to have the tools. You have to have the conceptual knowledge of how to put the things together. So you have to understand the fundamentals of how these things are going to interact. And then you have to be able to put that together, and you have to make trial and error, make mistakes, and then be able to learn from those mistakes, be able to push yourself forward. And so like just buying the tools isn't enough, right? You have to actually go in there and do the work. And then you've got to check your ambition. Yeah. Like, or the want, or like the perceived ambition with what you're actually prepared to do. Yeah. And that's something that, some people struggle with as well. Even like very high performers like yourself, right, would sometimes probably struggle to understand that someone doesn't care about being the best. They just want to be good. Right. Like, and that's something that, everyone has to kind of check themselves, because like a bodybuilder might not understand why you only want to do CrossFit.
That's true. That's a good point. Why don't
You
your
know?
muscles this big? It's true.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I totally agree. So it's all about commitment. It's about committing to, like, if you're going to work 40 hours a week, which that's what you're going to work, right? That's your job. Why not make 2 to 3 times more sales?
and that's a good part-time job. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's a good part-time job, right? As a business owner. One question we teach a lot of companies when they're interviewing salespeople is just right up front, like, how much money did you personally invest in sales training last year so you could learn how to sell more? And if salespeople come back and said, well, I bought a book for $20 and, I watched this live stream for about an hour, it was like $100. Why on earth would that employer want to hire that person who really hasn't invested in themselves to learn advanced skills to sell more over the person that's like, hey, I invested, $3 or $4 grand in this training program. And then I went to this, 3-day seminar and I spent this. Like, that person's serious about their profession. So they've invested in themselves. And even if they come back and say, well, my company had a sales trainer come in, we say, well, that's okay. But what did you personally invest? Like, not what your company invested.
What are you doing to better yourself?
What are you doing to get better? Not what your company's doing. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important.
So be committed. Number 3 is being prepared. Being prepared. I get so frustrated when I see salespeople, when I go into companies and we analyze, and I'm like, none of your sales, I don't say this, but I'm thinking in mind, none of your salespeople are prepared. They get the same objections. They get the same type of concerns every day from their prospects. And it's like every day they're winging it, saying something different, seeing what works. Like, there's no preparation. When they go into that sales call, it's like they're just winging it, hoping and praying that something they're going to say is just going to magically trigger the prospect to want to buy. Now, if you're here, you're on the calls every day, you're in appointments and meetings in the home, maybe in a boardroom meeting, if you're sell B2B, if you're on the phone or on Zoom, you're pretty much hearing the same things from your prospects day in, day out. Why not be prepared and know exactly what to do in your sales process that leads them down the path to make the decision to purchase what you're offering to solve their problems? I see so many salespeople that just aren't prepared.
Yeah, it's a really big problem, and I think it goes all the way through to, like, just them, being well presented, being on time, having, like, not only understanding what they're selling. I've gone on to sales meetings when we've come on to like a done for you management, and I've asked, what are all the payment plans available? And some guys are like, and I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah,
like, you guys have been selling this for 6 months and you don't know, like, your product ladder back to front?
Yeah.
Like, what's your upsell strategy? What's your cross-sell strategy? What's your referral strategy? It's like, oh man, like, you guys don't make any money, do you?
Yeah.
and you can immediately see, and then you've got one guy that's like, yeah, I do this, 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 and this. And they've made all of their own strategies. They've prepared their own homework for prospects. They've done all this stuff and they've been proactive, and they make quadruple what everybody else makes. And then all the sales guys are going, what's he saying on the call? I go, mate, it's not what he's saying, it's what he's doing. All right. Like, that's
not just what he's saying, is what he's doing day in and out.
Yeah.
So he or she is
prepared.
So the third biggest thing is you have to be prepared. Listen, you're going to hear the same objection concerns every day. Why not learn exactly what to say and ask to help your prospects overcome those, rather than just winging it? Like,
it should almost be like you turn off and like you, like, it's almost boring. When by the time you get to I can only imagine you did it for way longer than I did, but I felt like I kind of cracked the code enough.
Yeah.
Right. For like what I was doing, to where I was closing it over 90%. So, like, you know what I mean? In the industry that I was in, and I could hear an objection and I could basically do it asleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it got to the point where the sales call was boring because I knew exactly what was going to happen, but I was happy with it being boring.
It's so true. Boring is good in our day.
I made a ton of money.
Boring is good because, like Matt says, if you know exactly what to do in and out, and like every sales call is just like the same old thing, is just boring, that's actually good because you know what to do and you know what to handle and what to do. It's not like a challenge every day. Like, if your sales calls are all challenging, that's your fault because you haven't learned the right skills to make them not challenging.
You can have fun when you go on holiday literally anywhere in the world and do whatever you want because you make a ton of money because you're really good at sales.
Yeah. You want selling to become boring. You're that good at it. That's 100%.
Exactly.
All right. The fourth thing, then we're going to go to 5. And this is a big deal. And I really thought about this. Like, what's a big deal that that not everybody says, but is really important. And that in my mind is treat all, and this is going to sound strange to most of you, but treat all of your prospects with respect. Treat all of your prospects with respect, even if they don't buy. I get so annoyed when salespeople like talk down to a prospect that didn't buy or whatever. And most of the time it was the salesperson's fault because
it's crazy.
They didn't draw out enough emotion. They didn't build a big enough gap in their mind of where they are compared to where they want to be. It was the salesperson's fault the sale wasn't made, not the prospects. And then the salesperson like gets aggressive and postures them and tells them they're stupid or, you suck or just whatever. That really annoys me because it just makes you and your company like have a bad name, bad reputation. And listen,
it does so much more than that. It destroys your ability to have a pipeline.
100%.
I'm all about one call closing as many people as possible, but really, really successful people, salespeople, like really high earning salespeople, they're not just the one call killer. Like that's not a thing. Like you can't make enough money doing that. You have to have, because if leads go down, then you're screwed, right? So then all of a sudden, if leads go down once every quarter, right, then essentially you're running on a 3-quarter year instead of a 4-quarter year. So you just can't make enough money. Yep. So you have to be able to like, first of all, it's fine if somebody can't buy, doesn't want to buy, like that's not a reflection of them as a human, right? At all. It's just a decision that they're making in the same way that they decided to buy a Dodge instead of a Chevy. You know what I mean? Like it's just a decision, right? So, but a pipeline is so important. So you need to have a quality relationship with that individual so that when they are ready to purchase, right, then they can. Like Will Hinkson, one of our guys who we're actually speaking to soon, he just signed up a guy that he followed up for 2 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. 2 years.
And like it's small little things, text, emails here and there, the occasional Facebook thing, but he made that sale. Yeah. He made the commission. Yeah. Like
that's insane.
Like, did you? You know what I mean? Like
you got to have the pipeline. Here's my rule with this. If I go to eat with somebody, let's say there's a business relationship that they're wanting to do. And if I see that person that I'm eating with put down the waitress or say smug things to the waiter, it's a huge red flag for me. And I will never do business with them. I don't care if they're freaking, worth $100 billion. If they're putting down people, even the waiter or waitress, I won't do business with them because I know that down the road, things go a little bit off. They might treat me the same way. And I don't want to work with somebody like that. So you should always make that a rule of thumb. You go out to eat with somebody and they're like putting down the waitress, talking bad to the waiter, looking down at people that they don't feel like are to their status, somebody you never want to work with, 100%.
As well, because like that, what if that person was an Olympian? Do you know what I mean? Like money is not I think people who make a lot of money and who are monetarily driven do not understand how people cannot be monetarily driven.
Yeah.
Some people are driven by families. Some people are driven by like athletics. Some people are driven by like the greatest surfer in the world, but they're basically a bum, right? Yeah. But they're like the greatest surfer getting around, right? So it's like, that's their passion. That's what they're going after. Everyone's got different things. Like, yeah, they're happy. They're working as a waitress, but they're super happy and they have their passion. Like it's just a very different success metric.
Yeah. And hey, it might be to their point in life where that's where they're at. And then something better will happen for them. You just never know everybody's situation. So you just like Christ says, follow the golden rule, treat others like you want to be treated. Like the rule that I just live by. And if I see people that put down people that they feel are below the status, huge red flag. You want to stay away from those people.
I got a really quick story about that. I remember when I was a kid, one of my best friend's dads, I've always been into watches, always, ever since I was like a kid, right? And he was like, "Oh, do you want to? I'm going to go buy a Rolex. Like, do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to come. You can buy a Rolex." And he was dressed like a bum, like a fool. But this guy had a good amount of cash, right? And he had a wad of cash that he was paying for this Rolex, and it was a Daytona, so it was like 50 grand.
Wow.
Right. And he walks into the Rolex shop and I'm with him and we're going and he's like, and everyone ignores him.
Yeah.
Everyone. And then he drops 50 grand cash on the table. And then all of a sudden they run over and he was like, "We're out of here. We're going to go across the road and buy it from over there." Like that. Awesome. Like that. And they were like, "No," like that. They're like that. And then he was like, and he told me, because I was like maybe 16 at the time. He's like, he said the same thing. He goes, "Never do business with people that judge you by what you look like." And I was like, man, that's a good rule. And then like from then on, I was like, and it's funny. And then years later, I was at a restaurant opening as like an 18-year-old. No, like no money. My dad's friend was opening up a restaurant, and I was in a very wealthy area in Naples where everybody's a trust fund kid.
Yeah.
Right. And I went into like a watch store just to have a look at the watches. I was by myself as an 18-year-old. They treated me like a king.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're like, whoa, this kid could be one of the trust fund kids that's getting around. Right. We better just treat everybody well. You know what I mean? So
true. It's a rule to live by. Don't associate yourself with people that put other people down that they feel are below their status. So you'll always do well if you follow that advice. Now, fifth thing, invest in your skill level daily. This is probably one of the most important things besides being committed. Well, all of them, being committed and being prepared, is you have to have the right skill level. You can be so committed, you can be so prepared, but just like Michael Jordan said, if you take 1,000 jump shots a day with the wrong technique, you're still not going to be great at basketball. You have to have the right techniques. You have to have the right skill level. So what are you doing? Like, what are you putting in your brain? Like, top salespeople thirst for knowledge. Like, I thirst for knowledge. I just ordered like 15 new books the other day. And my wife was like, what? You have like, I have like 3,500 books. There's just a few here. So she's like, what do you need all these books for? I'm like, oh, don't worry. I bought them from Amazon. They're like $8 each. Don't worry about it. I got to fill the new office with more books. But I thirst for knowledge. Like, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I cannot wait to devour that book. And as a sales trainer, I might go through an entire book on sales. And I'm like, yeah, that really sucked. Like, I think I lost some brain cells, but there was that one little thing that he said in there or she said in there. And I can re-language that and add that question into our sales process that we train people with. And that's going to convert better. And it was so worth it just reading that book. So what are you doing every day? Are you thirsting for new knowledge, or are you just watching Netflix at night, getting up in the morning, watching the news about politics, going to work, listening to Britney Spears, and you just show up to your job and then clock out? What are you putting in your mind?
Yeah, I did a YouTube video recently on my YouTube channel, and I was breaking down. I've spent $284,000 in the last 10 years on coaching.
Yeah.
So it's an average of $28,000 a year.
Yeah.
And for most of that, I had no business spending that much money on coaching.
It's so true. I mean, what did you spend with me? I mean, you're the CEO of the company now, but a couple of years ago, you were a client.
32,000.
Yeah, you spent like 32,000 to come in, and obviously you're already doing really well before. You're making 25 grand a month, but then you like double and triple that. So your investment.
Yeah, but 25 grand a month sounds good unless you live in like Manhattan, which I was living the equivalent of. Right, yeah. I was living in Sydney, Manhattan. Like that's the rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. You know what I mean? Like it's a living, but that's about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that knowledge that you learn, I mean, like I always tell everybody, we're going to end it on here. Your biggest expense in life is simple. It's your lack of knowledge. Your biggest expense in life is your lack of knowledge, of not having the right skill sets, the right questions, the right understanding of using human behavior in your sales process. If you're an individual salesperson, to be able to make 250, 300, 350,000 a year plus, or if you're a business owner, your biggest expense is not having the right skills to train your teams on how to scale your companies to, 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures. It's just your skill level. Once you have the right skills, everything's possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for those of you who want to learn those skills and you want to do something to develop yourself every single day, but you might not have the means to pay for something, or you're just looking for a new style, where can they get that from us, Jeremy?
Oh, that was good. I like that. So you go to our private Facebook group. Folks, we have about 11,000 people now. That thing is growing like a crazy beast at this point. You see 50, 100 people coming in every day now. But 11,000 people in this new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. There should be a little link on here you can click on. You can join for free. Matt and I go live in there about 4 times a week or so with different trainings, different Q&As. We interview clients of ours and break down their sales processes, all for you. We even give out little nuggets of training, 10 minutes on this, or, hey, do you ever get this? I want to think it over objection. We'll give it to you for free, a little 10-minute training. I did that. Okay. We give you little nibbles, little hors d'oeuvres. Even before you get into our virtual training courses as clients, you can just come in and experience it for yourself. We have people that throw in testimonials there that haven't even gotten to our paid trainings yet. Can you imagine what happens when they learn everything instead of just learning like 10% of 1% that we give out in the free Facebook group? So right when you join, be a couple questions. We ask you surveys so we know what industry and what products or services you sell. Click the join link, and then we'll tag you, and either myself, Matt, our CEO here, or our VP Marco will message you a free training on how to prevent objections from even happening in your prospect's mind. Not even how to overcome objections. How do you prevent the objection from even happening in their mind? So just check your messages on Facebook. Matt, thanks for being on here. Loving that new office over there in Sydney. You know, we move into the new Scottsdale, Arizona office here in a couple of days.
Yeah, buddy. I got to go through some of the finer points of the lease today.
All right.
Just to double check, but it's all looking pretty good. I'm pretty excited about it.
Love it. All right, everybody. We'll see you soon. See you next week. Thanks, Matt, for being on. Awesome.
All right. Awesome. Bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed these, here's another you can watch right over here, Join our free Sales Revolution group. Click the link below, join us, and we're gonna help you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon.